Hello, everyone. This is Priyanka from Codabears, and today we're going to talk more. It's probably an extension of what Calvin started. So, we're going to talk more on the Kinetic App Studio here. So, let's start with what is this Kinetic App Studio that we always talk about? Once we're moving out from this classic to kinetic screen, it's all completely different. And the most important thing that we're all talking about is the App Studio. App Studio is basically a no code or a low code tool for customizing the kinetic user experience. When you compare it with the classic version, it's probably like a more modern and a cloud-based platform for users. It provides more flexibility and scalability. Epicor Kinetic is a global cloud ERP solution which was designed to help industries obtain greater efficiencies for tons of business processes. It is built to provide relevant data where employees can make faster and smarter decisions on a large scale in real time. I've been working on Epicor since close to 10 years now. I think in 2014 I started off as an intern, and I've been working on Epicor since 10 years now. Mostly I worked on Classic, but from probably like 2.5 years, I've been working more and more on the kinetic screens. So initially, when since I was more on classic, the news that the classic forms were going away in a few years was a bit alarming for most of us. But now that I've spent more time on kinetic, I think kinetic, it has a lot of advantages to it. It delivers consistency in navigation. It has all these simplified visuals that you can drag and drop around and play with it. It reduces the clutter and the noise from your daily tasks, and there's an improved accessibility and productivity. Epicor App Studio, it offers applications for everyone, like, even if you're not a developer, since it's more like a no code or a low code kind of a tool. So even if you don't have some coding experience, you can still start working on it, making some customizations on it, and all that. So this updated app, it minimizes the complexities of your kinetic screens, thereby reducing the amount of code needed. The tool adds layers to the screen that is being modified rather than modifying the screen itself. And this helps in upgrades, and it helps future proof your customizations. In Classic, you probably would have done a customization layer, and if you have to build on top of it, you would have to have your old customization to actually build on top of it. Else, if you're building a complete new layer, then you would have to go back and redo all your customizations and all that. Once I move on to the Kinetic App Studio demo, we can look more into this. But these layers, it gives us the ability to select what layers, when there are different customizations going on, we can select the layer that we need and put it as the default layer. So as this technology continues to evolve, so does the ERP Epicor software and the App Studio. Back when I started working on App Studio, I've been seeing like a lot of refresh issues and all that happening. But now that we are moving on to the later versions, my demo is going to be on the 2024 version. We've seen that as we are moving on to these different upgraded versions, we're seeing less and less of the problems like refresh issues and all that happening. So it's constantly evolving and giving us a better platform here. So let's take a look at some of the key features of App Studio. We'll just talk about this briefly before we go on and actually look at some of them on App Studio. I feel like one of the most important one is the no code or low code personalization. App Studio features like a user-friendly interface with a visual designer so that you can drag and drop functionality for easy configuration in this environment. It also allows user to tailor their system with little to no coding experience. Now, I wouldn't say like you don't need developers at all because there's low code, but at least for the initial starting ones where you don't really need, if it's not like a really complex customization or something like that, you can go ahead and use all the drag drop functionality on those widgets and get your customization started on. Then your next important feature is your layers. Since you can just create all these different layers, you can go ahead and multiple developers can keep working on things. And then once you go into your menu maintenance, you can probably select the layers that you think are important right now to move onto your production, and just you can use those layers instead of actually having to use one customization, build on top of it, build on top of it, and then when you're using the most relevant one, you would need all the underlying customizations beneath it in Classic. So that's one main advantage moving on to Kinetic. I've also seen like initially there were a lot of issues with these layers. When you go ahead and set them on menu maintenance, there were some problems happening with the layers. But as we are moving on, I've been seeing less issues with that. So that's one good thing. Then you have your custom UI elements and buildings, bindings. Users can create these custom UI elements and bindings and user defined fields and all that. It facilitates the addition of tailored elements to your ERP screen, which can be aligned with specific operational processes or user roles, enhancing the interface's functionality to meet precise business needs. So you have all these UI elements, these widgets and all that App Studio has. And just looking at those, it gives you like an idea of what you're going to do with that, and you don't need to write all that additional code. You can just use those widgets over there. Then you have your advanced data displays. Like one important thing is you have your it integrates with BAQs, etc. And then once you integrate with your BAQ, you can directly display that data onto your form here. And you can also use your ERP, so your REST ERP widget. There are a lot of ones on App Studio that you can probably just drag and drop and use them rather than actually having to code all of them. So one important thing was this BAQ that I found. When you have a grid, you can just on the back end of the grid, you can just include your BAQ. Then also you can include a BAQ refresh widget, and that helps you go ahead with your customization. Then you have these data validations. You have all these conditions and all that. Like instead of writing the code for the condition, you can use your condition widget, and that widget actually allows you to put in various conditions. You have something like a switch widget also, where you can put in your conditions and all that. You can do all your data validation right there. You have the backend and REST API integration. Like I was saying, you have your ERP REST widget over there, where you can directly use that, and you can use your business objects. You can use your functions associated to that business object and all that. It enables complex data integrations, and it allows these interactions with external systems through these REST APIs, which expands the system's connectivity and enhances its capacity for handling extensive data interactions.
Got a question from Mazine. In what version are these features? So when you were going through these, what version were you looking at?
Like initially these started with the original version itself, like back from 2021. But like I was saying, they're becoming more and more sophisticated or more and more enhanced in the versions that are coming. Like back when we started App Studio in 2021, all these features were in there. It's a different thing whether we were able to use all of them up to its 100% potential or not. But right now I'm going to have my demo in 2024, and I've seen that it's a lot more improved, all these features. But to answer your question, they've been there since the beginning.
Thank you.
So another feature would be your mobile and integrations. Now that you have App Studio, you can now Epicor is moving more into a mobile friendly version. So since you can open these on your browser, you can open these on your tablets, you can open these on your desktops, on your smartphones, etc. So it's more mobile friendly now. It creates responsive applications that function across various devices, including your desktop, tablets, and smartphones, allowing your team to stay productive on the go. It embeds external web applications to allow for a more seamless user experience and expanded functionality. And these mobile components, they have features like the geolocation, camera, barcode scanning, etc. Now, I've not worked on those as such, so I don't have much of a demo to show on those, but I know that like they're possible, and they give you more of your mobile and integration feature. And then you have your workflow automation. It automates specific business processes, facilitating standardized workflow execution across the organization and crafting their own user experience. Like when we go onto the App Studio, we can see how we have all these various steps defined, and all that. And then it goes like the events, etc. They go on that flow, and you can automate that workflow, and it's easy with that. App Studio is more cloud friendly, and it's also easy to upgrade. App Studio has all these layers to screens instead of modifying them directly. So it's more upgrade friendly. And then some of the key benefits for Epicor is you have rapid configuration and personalization. So App Studio offers a robust low-code or no-code toolset that allows user to personalize their screens. So this feature is very beneficial as it enables all the non-technical users to get started. And you don't have to, even for simple basic customizations, you don't have to depend much on the developers. And the other benefit is your user experience. Since the Kinetic is browser based, it provides a fresh and modern look that's both it's both intuitive and user friendly. This design transformation allows users to easily navigate through the system, and it allows us to access the most used screens, like how Calvin showed us. The most used forms, all those you can just put it into your favorites, and then you can use them. Yeah, you can easily use them. So it gives you a more user friendly experience. It also has these enhanced adaptability with flexible configurations. With Epicor Kinetic's web-based platform, users can access the ERP system from anywhere with an internet connection. Now that you have your browser, once you have your URL and you're on your VPN, you can access this anywhere that you have your internet on. You don't have to actually sit on your desktop and wait for your laptop to know, that I want to open Epicor and look at some information here. So now that it's all browser based, just anywhere that you have internet access, you have that flexibility to open and look into your needs. Some of the key elements on App Studio would be your events, data views, data rules, your toolbox, and all that. Let's take a look at App Studio here. And I'm going to go ahead and use my favorite auto screen. And the reason I have all these Kinetic 1, 2 here is I'll just show you in a bit, because I had all these different layers that I had created just to show the functionality of how the different layers work. So let's take an example of Order Entry Kinetic 1, where I had like a simple customization on it. And then, so in this customization, all I had was like, it's just a simple thing. I added my text box over here. It's a new text box. And then in my layer 2, all I did was add a button here. So right now, these are two separate layers, and let's say like two different developers are working on it, including in their own customizations inside that. So in here, I just have the test button. So once you go into your menu maintenance, then in classic version, I would have had to do my customization 2 on top of my customization 1. Instead, since we have layers now, you can just go ahead and select the layer that you want, and that way what happens is when you go back to your layer 1 and 2, on my 1 and 2 I had actually selected both customization layer 1 and customization layer 2. So that's why I have both of these now available here. I wouldn't have to redo it or do it on top of my customization 1. All I would do is in my menu maintenance, I would just go ahead and select those layers separately. So this gives you more of that flexibility that I was talking about. So here in the customization, all I did was select my layer 1 and layer 2. So that way you can keep things out, and you can also, like, let's say you only want this for a couple of users, then you can create a separate layer for them, give their security feature, and then just include the layer that is needed by that particular user. So this way, it's very beneficial. In the initial layers, I was finding a lot of problems just by selecting these layers. It wasn't coming up, or something was happening, and things like that. But as we move on to the upgraded versions, I've seen like the layers working a lot better, which is like a great feature. Let's go ahead and take a look at the actual App Studio. Anytime that you go onto your App Studio and you're making a change, make sure that you select your layer, since otherwise, once you make changes, you wouldn't know which layer this comes under. So always make sure that you select a new layer and given your new layer name. Once you create your layer, now you can start making your changes that you would need. Now, some of the most important things here on your App Studio would be your data views. So you have all these data views particular which are particular to this screen. Like, let's say because I'm on my order entry screen, I have all my data views related to my order entry screen. Now back in Classic, if I would have to have, let's say I would have to have another data view included into my form here, I would have to write code and all that. So now you don't need to know that, because you can just go ahead and do your add new data view. Since let's say I'm on the order entry screen and I want to look at more information from the customer screen. So what you can do is you can just go ahead and add new. And in these newer versions, you also have this data guided setup, or you can do a manual. In the earlier versions, all you had was your manual, so you would have to go and do it all manually. But now you have your data view guided setup. You can use that, and this way it's a lot easier adding new data views, because you're not actually going ahead and writing code for it. So select your source type, which could be either a BAQ or a business object service call. Let's say I'm doing a BO service call, and I'm going to select my customer business object. And then I'm going to do something like my get by ID, given my customer name. My request parameter would be that the customer name, which comes up directly from my order entry screen. So I can go ahead and select order head and say that I want to use the customer num here. And your response parameter would be, I want to get back my customer table. So you can select that. And then this is going to be your new data view. Like, or initially the order entry screen would not have your customer data view, but now that you set that up here, it would come up here, and then you don't need any filters. You can do next. So what this really does is it gives you a new data view here, and it also gives you an event which you can call to actually get your customer records. So now this wouldn't have a trigger, but you would have to manually call it. We can take a look at it once we go on to events, but these are the two things that are created once you do your data view guided setup. So you have your trigger call here, and then you have your new customer data view created here. So once you have these data views, once you have data inside your data views, then it becomes a lot more easier when you have new fields that you're setting up here, or let's say you're setting up a new grid and you want to get information. In this case, let's say from the customer table, you want to get it, then you can just go back into your properties for that particular text box or grid and set that in.
Got a couple questions if you don't mind. From Marty, would you be able to use App Studio to add the manufacturing min and max fields back onto the time phase screen so that they're visible without having to go to the side screen?
I don't remember. Were they from your slide out panel that you want to add here in your main screen?
Into the main screen, yeah. So I would think they'd be, you would just add them to the grid. You'd already have them in the data view. It's just they pop out based on what you've got selected.
Correct. But it also depends. Like, let's say here, when I go into my sales order, since I'm on this all relates to my order head screen, right? If I want to get information from something else, like let's say order line, then you wouldn't know which order lines information that you're setting up here. So in your question, I'm
It
not
has to do with
sure.
the time. Yeah, it has to do
Time,
with the
yeah, on
time
the
phase screen, which
time
is
phase,
different.
yeah, it's different. So, but as long as you have that information already, I would think you can go ahead and set it up, but we would actually have to take a look at that screen to see if we can get the information in here or not.
Okay. And then from Ed, back when you were doing menus, how are the layers applied based on the order column? Is order one applied first? And if something was changed in both layers, does order two override what was done in the order one layer?
So I haven't seen anything like that happening. Now let's say I go ahead and say, like, I don't want test layer one, and then I just have test layer two. So when I apply, this becomes my order one. Test layer two becomes my order layer one. But let's say I save this, I go back, and now I want to include my test layer one also. And then even though I select this after my test layer one, it just gets selected like this, which is like test layer one and test layer two. It gives you an order of one and two.
And I think
So,
I've heard from someone else, it actually merges them together so
mhm.
that it won't um, if it's shown in one layer, it's going to be shown. So it's always
Yes,
overwriting to show. Is that correct?
it is also like there may be cases like when we looked at the my order entry one and two, even though my first layer, even though I was trying to apply my first layer first, which the first layer had my text box and the second layer had the button, but see how the button came up first and the text box came up below it. The order shouldn't matter. So like even what I've seen is like even when we put in these layers, the order may change. Like let's say I have a new grid on my test layer 1 and then I had some other grid on my test layer 2. So I've seen that when we combine these layers, the order of it might have changed. And even though you want, like let's say, grid A to come up first and then grid B to come up second, the order might have changed, but you can always go back and change that setting and save it.
For Mike, is it possible to modify an existing data view, for example, join a new table to it and get related information, or is it best to
No,
create a new
always
view?
yes, create a new view. You don't want to disturb the base ones that Epicor has given us, because we don't know what is going to mess up with that. Just make sure never to update the base ones. Or if you have something that you want to update, always try to go ahead and add a new one.
And then from Ileana, is having two separate layers better than merging the layers?
I would say having two separate layers is better, but it also depends on your company structure, I would say. Like let's say you don't want to give your layer one's features to everyone. You just want to give it to chunk of users. So in that case, like having separate layers would be really helpful. Whereas like if you're combining them, then again it gets complicated when you want to show only certain features to someone and things like that.
I'd say, like you said, if you need it for security, it's best to have
Mhm.
them separate.
Correct.
If you're developing, it's also really good to have them separate because then you can kind of figure out what you want to do, test
Mhm.
things individually. But once it's proven out, you could probably merge, assuming that you didn't have that specific group issue anymore. You could merge them together. So then you're only managing one layer moving forward.
Yes. I know Ilyana and me, we've been working with these layers, and sometimes we get like really stuck on those layers because they don't show up correctly. But I would still say, like in the more advanced versions, that kind of like funky thing is happening less and less.
Thank you. I think that gets all our questions so far.
So that was what I wanted to talk about, data views. It's like one important feature here on your App Studio, and once you know how to add your new data views and all, it gets a little more easier when you're trying to include in new fields. Let's say from my on my order line screen, I want to add something from my part screen. Then I can go ahead and add my part data view here. Then once I get my part data view, I can go on to my line details and then include in any of those features that I want on my from my part stream. So things like that, it gets really easy instead of sitting down and writing the whole code of getting a new data view, querying the business object for part and things like that. Then your next important feature on your App Studio would be your events. Events probably control the whole of your App Studio. Events are like very, very important because you need to know which event is being generated at which point of time to make your change. Let's say you're opening the form and then you want to display some kind of message. There is an event for it. Let's say you're tabbing out of your text box and then you're trying to do something. There's an event for it. There's everything here on App Studio is associated with events. The more important part would be finding out the exact event that you want to work on or you want to change it. Now, again, in events also, you cannot modify the base events that Epicor has given you. If you look at user-defined actions, this is probably what drives everything on your screen here. This would be different for each screen, but let's say, like since I'm on my order entry screen, all of these events drive everything that happens on my order entry screen. And any of these events you cannot modify. Epicor has logged them. But all you can do is you can either do something before it or you can do something after it. You just cannot do anything on it. You cannot modify it. And then in these, apart from these user defined actions, anything and everything related to your data is all under your data. Like you have your column changing events and all that on your data tables. Anything to do with data views, you have it in your data views section here. When a row is changed, when a view is changed, what happens and things like that. Then you have epi bindings for each and every field that you have your epi binding. You can see what is happening after that. So since I clicked on that after init key fields, see how it is logged. Since you cannot really update anything on it, you can always go ahead and when I do my order detail.part so there's something happening here where you're searching for that part number and all that. So if assuming I want something to happen after it, I can always go ahead and select my let's say I want to just do a message box. I can, when I drag and drop it over here, it's going to ask me, since this is logged, do you want to do it before or after? So select either before or after, and then it's going to give you a new event where you can put in your own functionality here. Events is probably the most important part of App Studio because everything is driven by it. Finding out that exact event is sometimes it's a little difficult. And in that case, what I would do usually is I would go back to my browser and then go into my developer tools and try to find out what event is actually happening there. In this case, let's say I'm on the order entry screen, and then I want to know what happens when I actually click on any of the order. Let's say I want to find out what event happens on it. Then I can go into my more tools on the browser, go into your developer tools. Your Control Alt 8 gives you your debugging status to true, and then you can find, now that it's true, now you can find what all other events that run on the background when you click on something. Now, when I clicked on my order number, I know that all of these are happening. I know that there's a view changing happening. There's the on-click grid landing page happening, and all of these and everything over here. You can find it in your either in your user-defined actions, or it would be in your data views, your epi binding data table, also in your components. You have like something like a button click and all that would come under your controls. So on click of a button, what would happen and all that would be here. Anytime you create a new event, it comes up in your general events here. Like we just created something like custom after order detail.partnum. So that came up here. You can also search for it. Like let's say you don't know where it is, just go ahead and like search for it here, and it would show you you can see which event you're looking for. It tells you which folder it is under. After your events, now the other thing that we have here is our data rules. Now data rules is probably more or less similar to what we had on Classic. It's just different on the way that we see it, but the functionality and everything is same like how we would have used it on Classic. So we can always go ahead and create a new data rule here, and then you can select which data view the action is supposed to happen on. You have all these data views here. So let's say I want it to happen on my order head. Just go ahead and select that. Then you have, do you want it to based on condition or no condition? I want it to be based on a condition. So I'm just going to select that and say, let's say my order head dot PONUM field, select your operator. So when that is equal to, you can also select your value, or it could be based on another field. So if you select a field, it allows you to select which field it's based on. Now all that I'm doing is, if my order head PO number is blank, then what I want it to happen is I'm going to put in a new setting style and say I want to, this field should be highlighted. So one of the question that I got recently was, can we change these colors? Right now, no, we only have these colors, which is like red for error, and I think yellow for highlight, green for okay, and blue for warning. We don't have an option, as far as I know, to change these colors. And then this time what happens is, whenever my PO num is blank, then I want my that field to be highlighted. So when you give a different color, you know, like the user knows that this field, I need to fill this in. The way that we would use these data rules is similar to what we would have done on Classic. It's just the setting up of things would probably be a little different because of the UI. See how this is turned blue now, and once I fill something in, it's going to go away. Things like that, you can do it in your data rules. And then for each and every field over here, let's say if it's a text box, if it's drop down, anything and everything, it is all associated with properties. Now, this functionality is also similar to your Classic screen, where you have every field on your form is associated with some kind of properties. You can go ahead and change the name of it. And the more important one would be your epi binding, because you need to know which field you're going to bind that value to. And then you have your behavior also, like on blur is probably like when you step out of this, you want some kind of event to be generated. Things like that. All of those you can give it over here. You can also set it to, let's say if you want to hide some field, even the base fields, you can hide them. You can always like hide them here from your state. When you go back and next time you want to unhide it, you can always click on your unhide and you can see it back here. So you have all these different properties which you can set, and then for a button you would have something like an on click. Let's say we actually go back to our toolbox. Even this toolbox is similar to classic, except you have more features, but you have various things which we wouldn't have seen on classic. Like one of them was the PDF viewer. The other thing was there was one picture box. A picture box was something that like on classic you would have to have written like tons of code for you to display an image. Drag and drop your picture box here and then change the properties so that it gets you what you're looking for. So in that way you have many more additional features like your website widget control. You have your PDF viewer here where you can view your PDF file, things like that. Now let's say I'm on my button here and then I go into my properties, change the name of the button. Just by clicking on this on click, you know what has to happen when this button is clicked. So you don't have to really go back and write code for it. So simple things like these, the functionality using App Studio is a lot easier. And then once I have my button click event here, then I can go and just say, let's say I just want to display something here. Go into advanced and param here, and then select your different types like alert, okay, okay, cancel, yes, no, and all that. And let's say all I want to do is print my order number here. The way you would use variables here would be within these curly brackets. So this way, this event is on your button click. It already came up on your button click. So what you would have to do is just by you didn't have to write any backend code for it. You just have to drag and drop those functionality from here and then you get it right away. So when I go into my order here and click on my test button, I see my order number, which was 5427. Simple things like these, you don't need coding experience. You can just go and do it here. So that way, App Studio is a lot more easier. Probably when you're moving on from Classic to Kinetic, you wouldn't like this feature initially. I didn't like it initially, but now I just always use Kinetic. So in your actions here, any of these events that we have seen, everything is based off of these widgets that we have here. Most of the functionality, like if it's all like basic functionality, everything can happen using these widgets here. If it's a more complicated, let's say you have a really big customization on classic that you're trying to uplift and it has like a lot of code which you're not able to do using these widgets here, you always have your functions. They're your best friend now, because like now you can just go back and write the code in your ERP function. And what I would have done is just drag drop my ERP function widget here, and in the properties name in the function library that I'm trying to use. And you can also send in input parameters inside your function. You can get back parameters from your function. So that way, if you absolutely have to write code, you have your functions here, and on your UI layer, all you would have to do is drag and drop your function. But for most of the features, you have these widgets can probably accomplish what you're trying to do for. So you have like these condition widget is one of the thing where all you would have to do is you don't go have to go back and write your if and else condition and all that. You have a condition widget, you have a switch widget here. So you can go into properties, and in these parameters, you can give in your expression, trying to validate something here. And then once you have your expression set, let's say in my case, I'm just trying to do something basic, like trying to see if my order num is equal to 5427. Then once you have your condition here, you have your true and false. So you can do your true and continue with whatever you're trying to do. In my case, all I'm trying to do is like just give a dialog box. And even in false, you can go back, select that, and in your false, just try and given the next functionality what you're trying to do. Just by using this widget, you can get that if and else kind of a thing done here. You also have your switch wherein you can give multiple conditions. Usually instead of the dialog show, ERP message handler is what we typically would use. Some of the other common things that we would have used is in data views, you have your data view conditions. So let's say you event that got generated, there was we are getting back all of the results from that data view. Let's say we did not filter it down by the customer number, and then we got all of the records from customer business object into our customer data view. You can use your data view filter set, and then you can filter down the data based on, let's say, the customer ID. You can filter it down. Then you can also do your data view clear and all that using these data view actions. Some of the other common things that I've used is my events. So you can also mimic whatever is being done on your current screen by using these event next. What happens is you can straight away go ahead and use whatever events are there in your user defined actions. Let's say, so I gave in a condition and then it's false, then I can go ahead and call in any of my events here. Let's say I'm just trying to do a simple refresh. You can also have drag and drop those user defined functions from here. Every form would have like a refresh and update kind of events. You can just drag and drop them over here so that you don't have to go back and again try and refresh your screen. You can reuse those widgets that were already in here. If it's not part of user defined, then once you given your event next, just go ahead and go into properties. Any and every of these widgets are associated with different properties. So you can, for any of them, just click on that and your properties come up, and given what event you're trying to find. Now, it need not be just the user defined actions. It can also be something that you have created custom after or order detail.partnum. You can give that into. The other common thing that I always use is the ERP functions. That's probably like the most common thing that we use. Then we have in miscellaneous, we have a lot of things like we can do an app open, app close, which is nothing but once you drag drop your app open feature, it's something wherein you can open your screen. Right now we are on erp.ui.sales order entry. Once I give my app open, go into parameters, and then I can give something like erp.ui.customer entry. So I can go into any screen from here. And if that screen internally has any layers or customizations on it and you want to open that customized layer, just go ahead and give in that layer name here. You can also mention if you want that to be like a slide out, or if it comes up just like a separate pop-up window. And if you also want to give some launch in options, like on our classic screen, we would have written code for it where we call the processor.launch option, something like that, and then we call which form we're trying to open, given whatever is the input values we want to be sent inside that form, and things like that. All of those can be done here now from this properties here. And you can also, if you don't want to give the view name, one other thing that you could do is from the menu maintenance, if you know your menu ID, let's say like for customer entry, it would have been whatever this menu ID here. If I directly want to give that menu ID, I can just give this menu ID here instead of saying this erp.ui.customer entry and all that. So that also it allows you to open those screens, and then you can close those screens using your app close. You have
Okay.
tons of other things here that you can do. I'm just pointing out the more common ones that I would use in most of the customizations. Your
Do have a
next other,
couple questions if you're ready
okay,
for them.
yeah, sure.
So for Mike, and this is going back to when you did your user actions,
Mhm.
are user-defined actions really the system built-in actions?
These
So
user
they're the,
defined action, yeah.
yeah,
So system built in the sense, for this form, whatever actions or whatever events are supposed to be happening, those all come under your user defined actions. So every form has different ones happening here in your user defined actions, but specific to this form, you have all these events happening.
and then from Matthew, I realize we're running short on time. He was wondering if you could show in Solution Workbench when you export your kinetic
Mhm.
screen, do the customizations also export and migrate?
Yes, let's go on to, I realize I have only 5 minutes. Let's go on and open solution workbench here. Mostly what it does is same like classic screen, whatever it would have done. The main difference is the way that the UI is, which can be a little confusing to what was happening. So let's go ahead and create a new solution here. I'm going to call it just test solution. Save that. Once you have the name of your solution saved, then your next thing would be going into your item types here. So if you click on this add database elements, it opens up this solution elements search screen here. and then go ahead and let's say if I'm trying to add a new add a BAQ into my solution, click on this search icon here, which opens up all of the BAQs. In this case, just go ahead and select whichever is your BAQ. And then now let's say I'm going to add my new layer, which I just created. We can go ahead and search. Testing EMUG is the layer that I just created. So let's say we go ahead and select that. We add anything that you would want, your libraries, your BPMs, anything and everything. Once you select them, see they come up under your selected items here. And once you have that, go ahead and click add and see how they would come up here, like the item types and each of the item. Like if you selected multiple queries, then all of them would come up here under your items. If you selected multiple customization layers, all of them would come up here. Then once you have all of your items selected here, just go ahead and do a build solution. So the same thing, you can change your name and then build and save it wherever you want. In my case, I can just select it on my desktop and save it. It's saved there. So the cap file is created, and then the reverse of it is also the same. Let's say you want to go back and install a solution. Go ahead and with these here you have your install solution here. Click on it and then go ahead and select your solution file, which was on my desktop, and then you can go ahead and install it. The way that this works is more or less same like the classic one. It's just that the UI is different, so you need to know what you want to click on. Does this help with the solution workbench?
Yeah, I think that does.
Okay. And one of the
And
common thing that I've seen is when I try to go and add database elements, and let's say I created a customization layer, and then I try to search for it, either I don't find it or I find it, but it's not allowing me to select, then it's only because you might have created it on a separate company and then you're trying to access it here, in which case you will not be able to select it. I've had that happening to me once where I wasn't able to select it, and the only reason was a different company. Just make sure that you're on one company, create all your customizations, your BPMs, everything, and then create your cap file and install it. That way it's easier to maintain than I do it on one company, go back, I'm not able to find it and all that.
from Tim, are there ways to customize MES UI through Application Studio? I'm thinking for shop user to clock in and start work activity through a series of pop-ups. Currently, users need to know where to click on the screen, and I want to streamline this.
For MES, you would have to go back onto your MES screen and then you can start customizing them any way that you want. When you say you want to do it from here,
In Application Studio, you can
yes,
customize the MES screens.
correct.
You,
Yep.
yeah, you would just do them as their own layers, just like you would any other screen in Kinetic.
Yes, and then you would have to set that layer in your menu maintenance here, but it works only for your main MES layer. It doesn't work for your, let's say you have your production activity screen, your end activity screen, and all that. For those, you would have to actually go back into your MES. That's probably like a whole new topic, but you would have to go back into your MES and make the layers inside the MES screen. You cannot directly do it from your menu maintenance here. Like from the processes, like we would have done on Classic, I would have just gone to the start production activity and selected my menu ID here. It's a different way. Your main MES screen, you can do it from here, but the ones inside, you would have to go inside your MES screen and do it. MES is probably a more broader topic to talk about for how the customizations have to be set as default and all that. But the only thing I want to say is you cannot do it directly from here. You would have to go back into MES to set them.
Perfect. And that takes us just a little over the time you had. Was there anything else you wanted to go over quick or?
There's like a lot of things inside the actions that we would do, but like once you start working on them, it's best to start exploring each one of them. Like I myself don't know all of them because I haven't explored everything as of yet. It's just the common ones that I've been doing, I try to show them. One other common thing is, just because I have it here, row update, where you can update a column value and all that. So I just try to show the common ones that we do, but there are like tons of things that Epicor has provided us, which probably would allow us to do what we're trying to do for. If not, you always have functions. Go back, use functions, and write the code in.
Perfect. All right.